I am so excited to have with me Phil Cooke of Cooke Media Group. Phil, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andrew. I'm thrilled to be here, man. This is really fun.
I am excited about this interview because you are one of the great masterminds of Christian media today, and I am so thankful to have the opportunity to be able to talk with you.
I'm not sure if I'm a mastermind or not, but I'm thrilled to be doing it. And as Christians, we need to be telling the story more effectively out there through media. So I'm excited anytime we can do that.
So tell me, where did the interest really begin for producing and directing great content?
Mostly when I was in high school, I had a bunch of buddies that made Super 8 films with my dad's old Super 8 film movie camera. And we made space movies and army movies and war movies and everything you can imagine. And went to college. I thought, well, maybe I could find some buddies that want to do it. And I roomed across the hall from a guy that was taking a film class, and my life has never been the same. Once I signed up for the film class, everything changed. So it's been an interesting road. I've been doing this for a long time.
So, from working with some of the greats like Billy Graham, Earl Roberts, Joel Osteen, and Joyce Meyer, has there ever been a bit of spiritual advice that one of them has given you that has really stuck with you?
Oh, over the years, I've gotten a lot of advice from a lot of people. Oral was very, I have to say, Oral Roberts was very instrumental and my first real employer, if you will. And he was always giving me great advice. I mean, he taught me so much about the camera. It was funny. He was instinctual. He knew about television. He understood. He'd been working with film cameras for years. Back in his old Crusades under the tent, they shot many of those with film cameras. And he'd been familiar with cameras for so long. And he taught me some amazing things, particularly about how to capture a speaker. And I'll never forget that he was just a brilliant, brilliant guy. He read two or three daily newspapers every day, read Time and Newsweek, read four or five bestsellers every month. He was just an avid reader, brilliant guy. And I just have learned so much from him over the years.
So, one thing that I love about Cook Media Group is that y'all produce and direct great content. Would you say, from working with studios such as Walt Disney and DreamWorks, would you say that today's TV lacks great content?
Well, it's funny. Today is probably the biggest opportunity for producers ever in history with Netflix and Amazon Prime and YouTube and so many other platforms out there. This is the time to do it. But I do think part of that is people are rushing things together. They're putting stuff together. They haven't thought it out really well. And I do have to say, I missed, they say there was a golden era of television back in the 60s and 70s. And I do miss a lot of that TV back then. But I think people are doing some remarkable things. We don't necessarily call it TV anymore because while it may be made for TV, it's actually made for streaming platforms. And sometimes it's shown in theaters, sometimes it's not. But it's an interesting time to be alive right now because there's so many opportunities for creative people. I think that's really important.
So, like for beginner show hosts like myself and many others that are out there really trying to produce great content, what advice would you really give us when we're first starting off?
You know what? I would say figure out what story you're trying to tell, and more important, figure out who you really are. There's a lot of TV hosts out there. There's a lot of podcasters out there. There's a lot of radio hosts. And we don't need another one of those guys. We need somebody unique and different. And so I always tell people, find that unique difference in you. What makes you different from every other person out there doing your job? I mean, when you think about it, there's nobody quite like you. And so in your case, Andrew, what is that thing that you feel like makes you so completely different from other hosts, from other, podcasters? Figure that out, and that will make a huge difference because like I say, we've got all these other great guys out there. We don't need another one of them. We don't need someone who copies them. We need somebody who understands how unique they are and what they can bring to the table. And when that happens, something special usually follows along.
That's great advice. So, speaking of creativity and great content, you just recently wrote a book that I thoroughly enjoyed called Ideas on a Deadline: How to Be Creative When the Clock is Ticking. And that
There
is
you go.
it was such a great book. And I'm not an avid reader, but sitting down, being able to enjoy that and just writing down so many pages of notes and
Sure.
advice that I can go go back to, it was just amazing. It was like sitting down reading the Bible, is how I would say it, because it was so much wisdom to just soak in, and it was just like amazing.
Well, you're very kind, Andrew. It's I think the thing that I want people to understand is that everybody is creative. So often when I speak at conferences or I teach on creativity, people come up to me and say, "Well, Phil, that's great, but I was never born creative. I'm just not a very creative person." And nothing could be further from the truth. The fact is, there's no research at all that indicates some people are born creative and some people aren't. I mean, put a bunch of toddlers in a room together and they're all wildly creative. None of those guys you can look at and think he's going to be an accountant or he's going to be something boring. So I think that we first need to embrace the fact that we're all more creative. It's like a muscle, and if we don't use it regularly, we'll lose it. So I really wanted to write the book, particularly for people that have to deliver things on a deadline, and you don't have to be, a creative professional to do it. You may be a designer or a writer or a television host like you, but you could also be a teacher or an executive or a coach, somebody like that. But we all have projects. We all have things that have to be on deadlines. Today, with this podcast, I missed my deadline. I was 10 minutes late on getting on it. So that's a good example. We all have deadlines we need to face. And so I really wrote the book to try to help people understand that you can still have breakthrough ideas, even if the clock is ticking, if the pressure is on, if you have a killer deadline. There's secret ways that you can still have brilliant ideas. And so I think that was the focus of the book. And I think anybody that really has to deliver great stuff on a schedule, this book was really for them.
You was talking about creativity and everything and how I'm different than different podcasters and everything. And one thing I like to do is interviews. And in your book, you
Yeah.
talk about having a eureka moment or a breakthrough moment. And, it's just like having conversations with people really just draw me, like talking about getting the Christian message out there and just, and every time I go back and listen to an interview, there's always a breakthrough moment that people can use, for the rest of their life.
That's exactly right. It's interesting. The, one of the points of the book is that what we think is a eureka moment, when we think this idea falls out of heaven, is really not a eureka moment. It's only the ending of a long process of work, of research, of reading, of studying, of reflecting, of thinking. Very often we work on these ideas and we work so hard and nothing happens. But then when we relax a little bit, we're maybe in a conversation with somebody, maybe sleeping at night, maybe taking a nap or driving in the car. It works for me when I'm under the shower. Suddenly, our subconscious puts all these pieces together and that big idea hits. So you're exactly right. You can be in a conversation with people. Often when your mind is focused on something else, it's when that big moment happens. So that's a great point. And I think people need to understand that, just concentrating so hard on your idea, sometimes that just doesn't yield anything. And when you just kind of let go and relax and do something different, that's when the idea pops up.
I've had a lot of interviewers come to me and ask me, how do I go by the flow of conversation? Because I'm one of those, I used to have a list of questions sitting in front of me, but I've learned that with the flow of conversation, it flows better and you're not under so much pressure. And I believe it truly has to be a gift. It's all about a calling, like you're called to direct and produce, and you deliver great content and you help people with content. I was just watching some of the tips that you give today on YouTube, and it really blessed me to just learn how I can maximize my ministry. And
Yeah.
it's always, I tell people there's always room to improve. Even though you might have a list of questions sitting in front of you, are you really ready to ask those questions?
That's really true. And a big part of it is most people don't really listen. When they are talking to someone, they're not listening to what the other person's saying. They're just trying to think of the next thing they want to say. And so I find very often the art of listening is so incredibly important. If you want to be the most interesting guy in the room, learn to be a great listener. And I think, number one, it just helps you be more interesting in conversations. People love to talk to you if you're really listening to what they have to say. And number two, when you're interviewing somebody like you are, it just you're reacting to what they're saying. You're not just coming up with a pre-written list of questions. You're actually responding to what they're saying and you're going back and forth. So the art of listening is really underappreciated today. I think all of us could learn to be better listeners. And I'm not joking when I say you want to be the most interesting person in the room, be the person that's the best listener because people love that.
And it all goes back to what the word says too, that we're to be hearers and not only doers
Yes.
of the word. So if we listen to spiritual advice and we're listening to the advice that people give us, then you know what? We're going to take it to heart and we're going to do it. Just like the word tells us to.
So true. That's so true. Yeah. Doing and listening, they're both important. That's for sure.
So what really inspired you to write the book Ideas on a Deadline?
Well, I just think a lot of people live under a myth that when the pressure hits, we just can't come up with great ideas. I also think people live under this myth that, ideas just come out of nowhere. You can't control them. You have to be sitting on your back porch and, suddenly this great moment happens. I just think that we need to understand that there are things we can do, triggers, if you will, that will help us really come up with brilliant ideas when we need them the most. I think if you're for me, I've done produced all kind of television programming over the years, and the network is not going to delay the release of a show because I can't come up with a good idea. The broadcasters aren't going to release a commercial if I can't come up with an idea for it. So, or they're not going to delay the release. So it's important that whatever we do, coaches have to show up for, the game schedule. Teachers have to show up in class. Executives have to lead their team. And there's so many things that can't be changed, and we have to deliver when we need to deliver the most. And so, a lot of people are afraid. Fear is a big, big problem, Andrew. And I think that if we could help people overcome that fear, give them some techniques and ideas for how to trigger those great ideas when they need them the most, it can change their future. So it's not a small thing. This is a really big deal. And that's really the driving force about why I wrote the book.
So, in our religious industry today, do you think that we limit ourselves by saying that the content that we make are only for Christian audiences?
Oh yeah, I think we do. I think that it depends on what you're doing. I think that if you're doing specifically Christian things, I think it's funny. I've got Direct TV at home, the satellite service, and I get it's got like 500 channels, and there are travel channels, there are home remodeling channels, there are gay channels, there are car channels. There's channels for everything. So there's no reason we couldn't have channels to help Christians be better Christians. I'm all for that. At the same time, many of us feel called to go out and reach a bigger world, a bigger audience. And so I'm encouraging both people, whether you feel like your calling is to help Christians be better Christians, great. If your calling is to reach a bigger audience in the world out there, great. So just to understand, one of the things we don't do as creative producers is I just start with the audience. I start by really looking, who am I trying to reach? What are they like? What are their characteristics? How do they respond? What are their personalities? What is this particular audience looking for? And then I try to create programming that'll reach that crowd. Very often we just create what we think is good and throw it out there and hope people watch. But I kind of like to think what's going on in the culture right now. What are people talking about? What are people thinking about? Try to target that, and it can have a much better and different result.
If only we was all as interesting as Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, we'd have it all set, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I was worried that trial was going to go on until Jesus came back. I don't know. That was an amazing. That just went on and on and on forever. But yeah, you're right. People were more interested in that than some really big issues that happened during that time. And so, but I think everybody's always interested in the bad news about people. We'll never probably overcome that. So, but yeah, I think you're you're exactly right.
So, to the one watching the episode today that may be struggling to meet that deadline or struggling with the idea for creativity, what would you really advise them to do?
Well, I give them two or three thoughts. Number one, embrace the deadline. Stop being afraid of the deadline. Stop fearing the deadline. In fact, I have to say, a dirty little secret among a lot of us creative people is we love deadlines because deadlines kind of give us a roadmap. We know when we have to act. In fact, honestly, I don't really start working on a project till I see the deadline coming at me in the distance. It gets me excited, gets my blood pumping. So learn that to become deadlines can be your friend, and they can really help because suddenly they know that if you have to deliver this by next Tuesday, that lets you shape the way you're going to attack the problem. So deadlines matter. If you if you regularly miss deadlines, clients won't like it, your boss won't like it, you'll lose respect out there. And so it's important that we really embrace deadlines and learn to deliver under those deadlines. Another thing is get organized. One of the things I find frustrating with creative people is they're so incredibly unorganized. A typical desk is piled high with stuff. Today, before this episode, I was upstairs cleaning my desk. I just think that get organized so you can create the kind of space you need to come up with creative ideas. So many people are always late, they're always frantic, they're always running around like crazy. They're never able to really deliver, and that's largely because they just simply aren't organized. You don't have to be fanatic, you don't have to be obsessed with productivity, but just start to organize your professional life a little bit and it'll be amazing the difference it'll make. And I think the third thing I would say is stop just sitting at your desk, beating your head against a wall, coming up with that idea. Very often, I find that if I go out for a walk, if I go shoot some baskets, if I go for a drive, any number of things, like I said earlier, taking a shower really unloads the ideas. That somehow that water hitting me, I just just explode with ideas. And I think it's largely because all those things were, our subconscious mind is working because we don't have to focus on walking. We don't have to focus on taking a shower. Even driving is fairly simple thing to do for most people. And so Willie Nelson, said he comes up with his best songs when he's driving. So I think that getting out of the office, going out and just getting away sometimes is the trigger that helps us the most. So many people, theologians like Soren Kierkegaard was a fanatical walker. Beethoven, fanatical walker. So many people throughout history have walked their way to brilliant, brilliant ideas and music and projects. So just getting out of the office can make a huge, huge difference.
So, when I was doing research about you and your wife today, I discovered that y'all have an amazing global mission called Influence Lab. And I want you
Yeah.
to tell us a little bit about where the mission began and what inspired you to keep it going.
Well, a number for years and years and years, we've had requests to come overseas and teach media to Christians internationally. We've been teaching in India, South America, Africa, multiple times, Europe, Russia, all over the place. And we've gotten we just I mean, in any given moment, I've got 5 or 6 of those invitations on my desk, and we were just funding that ourselves and going along. And we thought, you know what, we could really expand this if we could just get some other funding. So we created an official nonprofit called the Influence Lab. People can check it out at influencelab.com. And we launched that to help raise a little money. And our mission is we want to help Christians internationally use media more effectively. The demand is so amazing. I mean, we've done sessions. We took some Hollywood professionals, screenwriter, social media director, director of photography, an acting teacher. We took them all to Cairo, Egypt, and did a session in Cairo with Christians there who wanted to reach the Muslim world with short videos and YouTube and social media and scripting and short films and things like that. And so we've done that all over the world. And so if anybody feels called to that, you're certainly welcome to go to theinfluencelab.com and find out more about it because I think it's such a need. They just don't have in many places in the world, they don't have the training we have here. They don't have the resources we have here. And to have professional people who can go and teach these things is just changes the circumstances so much for many of these Christians around the world.
So, due to the challenges that COVID-19 provided, such as social distancing and quarantine, in what ways do you feel that that impacted Hollywood and the film industry?
Well, it impacted it quite a bit. It's interesting that for that year or so that COVID was really in lockdown, Hollywood was a ghost town. It was shut down. I mean, I can look out from my home office and I can look out over the valley and see Walt Disney Studios and Warner Brothers Studios and Universal Studios, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. They were all ghost towns. And the funny thing was that Christians during that time were producing more media than Hollywood because during that shutdown, the church really stepped up. They were live streaming, they were doing short videos, they were doing amazing things with social media. And I think it really got the church's attention that it's time for us to get serious about using the media. And I've seen some remarkable things happen, certainly in the church, because, there was nothing else happening. And really, I think there are churches that are alive and in business today because their media people, their communications team stepped up and was really getting that message out during that time. In fact, we have churches Our team at Cooke Media Group, we have 3 churches that we work with that we put on local broadcast TV in their community during the lockdown. So we helped them get their live stream going so well that they wanted to share it with the entire community. So there's a lot of churches that did some amazing things during the lockdown, and I was really thrilled. And now they're, coming out of COVID. I'm just hoping churches keep their foot on the gas pedal, keep doing stuff online, because I do think it's really, really important.
And I really think that it was amazing how all the Christian artists started doing more live stream concerts. That was just
Yes.
an amazing thing, and how the people gave to them just like they were at a regular concert, and it helped them keep on going.
Yes, it's absolutely true. The live streaming, I'll tell you, the technology just came of age at an incredibly important time. We've been working with churches live streaming for years and years, but it really blew up when this pandemic came along, and I was so thrilled that it made such a difference in so many ways.
Well, thank you so much, Phil, for your time on the Andrew Burnett Show. I have really enjoyed this conversation. Tell us how we can find out more about you, Cooke Media Group, your book, or Influence
Sure.
Lab.
Yeah, my blog is philcooke.com. I'm Cooke with an E, so it's PHILCOOKE.com. Our company is Cooke Media Group, cookemediagroup.com, and of course, the influencelab.com. Any of those will find it, and or just Google us, and you'll see it. I blog constantly. I'm always writing about issues of faith, media, and culture. So I'd encourage anybody that wants to find out more, go there, and you can find out about my different books. And I think it'll really help a lot. So, and by the way, your questions were fantastic. Thank you. You're great. So thank you for letting me be on the show today.
Absolutely. God bless you, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Take care.
Bye bye.